What's up everyone? So today we're going over and installing the Frstem modern 66-inch ceiling fan. It has 8 blades, 6 speed, and it's a low profile setup. So we're going to basically unbox this and actually install it and see whether or not it's a good purchase. So let's get into this DIY install and see what it's all about. So quickly, let's go over this real quick and see why I actually have it. So the first thing is, this is an indoor-outdoor fan, okay? And the reason why I purchased this is because I want it to go either outside under the awning, the patio. So when I'm out there working, it could cool down that area. Or I was also thinking about putting it in the breezeway. So we'll see actually how big it is and where I could actually put it. But it's 66 inches, and this is the largest fan I've actually purchased compared to my other installation videos on the fans for inside the house. And I want to kind of compare it for the output that it throws, because as we all know in my last video, the larger fan, you know, spins at a slower speed but throws just as much air as the smaller fan at a higher speed. So I want to see if this larger fan with 8 speeds actually throws more CFM, just because it's larger and it has more speeds. And then we'll see how bright the actual lighting is on it. So one thing I noticed is they actually send you a longer drop tube. So if this shorter one isn't long enough for you, they give you a longer one. But of course I need to use the shorter one, and I might even have to modify the shorter one just for it to be even shorter. But we'll see. We'll see how much this drops on an 8-foot ceiling. Okay, so this would be for if you have more of like a 10-foot ceiling, maybe you might want to use this, or a lot taller ceiling, so that way the air is closer to you and it actually moves that air down. So after using my number 2 Phillips, so they are flat blade or Phillips to, you know, add the fan blade. This is what it looks like. Okay, so it is textured on the fan blade itself. You can see the texturing, and then on the back side it says this side up, so this side faces the ceiling and then the curvature faces down. What I have noticed is it is thicker on the end where you assemble it, and then as you make your way down to the very far end, it tapers off thinner here, which is nice. So it's not all one size, so it's not all one thickness. They do taper it down. And then over here in the lighting fixture, what I noticed is it's an LED panel setup like that, and you have different LEDs for the color spectrum that you emit out. Super cool. Each one of these are like, you know, encapsulated in its own little bubble, and that's probably to diffuse the light, especially as it hits the globe itself. It diffuses a little bit better, and it gives you a more even light output. Another thing is you're gonna have to use the shackle it comes with, more than likely, just because this controller will slide into this shackle to mount your remote setup. So that's gonna have to go with this. So make sure you know, install this and don't use your old one. So once you assembled all your fan blades, now you need to make sure you take off all these stoppers. And this just keeps the motor aligned during shipping, but you need to reuse the screws, of course. And you need to mount this motor before you mount the fan blades, just so it's easier for you to get to the wiring. You could also mount maybe a few of the fan blades and just leave an opening for you to be able to get your head up through here and see what you're wiring. So first off, this fan here in particular, before you even start, you know, taking apart your fixtures or your old fans, make sure you run a test on it to kill the power to it. So first off, get yourself a tester. This one does 12 to 48 volts and up to 1,000 volts. So to show you how this Klein volt detector works, or power detector, whatever you want to call it, since this one has dual range, it does do low voltage and high voltage. So when you turn it on, green is high voltage, so 110 volts, or you know, 120 volts, whatever it is, higher voltage. This is the 5 volt, you know, phone cable. Still picks up voltage, even though it's set to the high voltage. And that's because it's still telling you that there's voltage in this cord, whether it's high or low. Okay, but when I switch it over to the blue, it's going to pick it up in the proximity, already warning you that there's some type of voltage in that area. So if I select and hold it, it'll turn to blue. And as you can see, it's already beeping. So when I get away from it, it's blue. When I get closer to it, it's already beeping. Now with the green, it wasn't doing that. And then when you touch it, it pinpoints that there's power. Okay. So if I hold this down, it'll switch to green. Okay. As you can see, it's not doing nothing until I touch it. Now the way the green works is when I get close to the voltage, it's going to go off because it's sensing high voltage, as you can see. And then if I touch it, of course it's going to go red. If I'm in the area, it's going to go red. Okay. Now if I change it to blue, hold it down, it's picking up voltage right away in the area because it's set for low voltage, but it's picking up, you know, of course, the high voltage as well. And then when you touch it, it still turns red. So it doesn't really matter, I guess, what setting you have it on. Just know if it's beeping, it's detecting voltage, and you should be aware. So another way, if you don't have one of these checkers, and you don't want to go out and buy one, what you can do is turn on your fan or turn on your light if it's a light or you have a light, and flip your breakers until that light goes off. Once that light goes off, you know the power going to it is attached to that breaker and it shut everything down. So this is what we have so far to hold it up in there. So it's just a flat plate to kick it out, and then of course our screws. So more than likely you're not going to need something like this or make something like this. You're going to have your junction box, but like I said, I wanted to get it as high up as possible. So instead of losing the 2 inches or 1.5 inches of the box and then plus another inch here, which would give me like 2.5 inches total of loss, maybe 3 inches, plus, you know, you have wires sticking up, I decided to make my own plate to hold the fan and suspend it out and lift it higher up into this soffit area. So to figure out how high up I could cut on this tube, keep in mind they give you 2 tubes, they give you an even longer one. So if you mess up, if you wanted to shorten one, you still got another one to fall back on, and you could always buy replacement tubes if for whatever reason you mess up. So basically I don't have to worry about the cover distance here. So this large cover here, you don't have to worry about this because once you put this tube up, you're going to slide that cover up and then, you know, bolt it up, and all that's going to be hanging is this tube, because once your wiring's done, you can put the beauty cover on. The distance that you got to worry about is the smaller cover that's going to hang down low like this, or actually it's going to hang like this over your fan. Okay, so you measure this. Okay, this gives you about 2 inches from the bottom of here to about right here, and then you measure this distance here, and this is a 1/2 inch, so that'll put you at 2.5 inches to cut it at, right? I don't want to go that short because it's going to be hard to get the pin in. So what I decided to do is cut it from here to here at 3 inches. So like it's going to be like this, right? So 3 inches will give me a little bit of room to put my finger in and get this pin in before sliding the beauty cap over, giving us about a 1/2 inch of stem where you could actually see. And that also allows for a little bit of movement and wobble, you know, with and making sure that the cover seats all the way down perfectly. So it'll give you a 1/2 inch gap here without touching this cover. So if this needed to pivot, because say you got a large slope on your roof, then you got a 1/2 inch for this cover to kind of compensate for that. So take your measurements like that. Just remember this distance is going to be flat, so you don't have to worry about this distance. You just need the cover that's going to cover the fan motor, okay, which is this guy. And then you need to add this distance here plus a little extra just to give yourself some room. I recommend at least a 1/2 inch extra. Okay, so my measurement is from this edge here to the center of this, and that's 3 inches, and that'll give me a 1/2 inch of leniency. And all I'm doing is using a Milwaukee pipe cutter 1 inch, and that fit perfectly. So it's a 1 inch max cut, so it could go a little bit larger just because it has to fit over the pipe, but 1 inch is what they recommend. So if you have a 1 inch or bigger, it's going to work, helping cut this pipe down to size. So for those of you who never used a pipe cutter, all you got to do is basically tighten it up till the jaws get tight on your tube. Okay, once they get tight, don't over tighten it because it's going to smash the pipe. And then all you got to do is twist it a few times so it scores the pipe. When it gets too loose in there, or you feel like it's not cutting anymore, then you go ahead and give it a slight turn like that to tighten it up a little bit more. Just remember not to crank down on it, just to keep good tension on it or good pressure on it, and then continue to rotate until your pipe gets cut all the way through. So now, after we have this all cut, what you need to do is deburr the inside of this. Use a deburring tool just so it doesn't cut any wires that go through here. If you don't have a deburring tool, you can always put a screwdriver in there and walk it around just to knock off all these sharp edges and check it. After you're done with that, now you're going to drill the hole for the pin to go through. And it's a little bit oversized, so I'm going to drill it out 1/4 inch. It's a little bit bigger than that. But the pin itself is about 1/4 inch, so 1/4 inch would work. And then I'm going to offset it from that edge to the center, 1/4 inch to 3/8 inch or 5/16, which allows that pin to sit around right here. But make sure you check your own pin because it might be larger. The offset might be a little different, so take your measurements just to double check instead of using the measurements that I'm telling you. Okay, so I drilled out the hole on both sides. One of the things you might want to make sure is when you drill this out, make sure you're drilling it straight across and make sure it's centered up. Okay, so this wire has to be fished through this tube. So in order to do that, you have to take off this screw here, which holds it up in this position here. So you take out that, and it allows this pin to slide up. So from that recess right in there, it basically goes across there, and it allows this thing to slide up and out, since it was actually located just like that. And then this would go back up like that once it's all done and assembled. So this wire needs to fish through this first, and then you put everything back together because these plugs cannot pass through this tube with this end. So the way this has to be assembled is the neck first. And then once you assemble the neck, then you assemble these wires with the beauty cap. So I got the 2 screws in with the pin. So the pin, the safety pin going across, and then 2 screws on each side. This slides all the way down like that, creating a seal. Okay. And then the wire going in between the pin on one side, figuring one side. Now this ball going in with the wires going through here. So as you can see, one gets threaded all the way through like that, and then one just presses up against the outside of the wall, and that's your complete setup. Good thing I made it a little bit longer because I do have to take into account this bezel. Now that the wires have to come up to the top and they don't come from the top down. I did not realize that I needed to thread these through this setup. I thought the wires from here would go down the tube, but I didn't realize they were this short. Okay, so I was able to install this fan now like this. 3 inches still worked out because it does give me the room that I need to reach my wires. But in order for me to put this bezel on, I had to put it at an angle like this, slide this over, and then get it into place. So as you can see, that's where it's at. So it's a tight fit. I recommend doing no lower or no shorter than 3 inches on the cutaway. I recommend probably at least 4 inches would be ideal. As you can see, it gave me about 1 inch. So keep that in mind. Maybe make it a little longer than I did and make it 4 inches. Okay, so in order for me to wire this all up, because I cut so much of it off at 3 inches, like I said, I recommend this being at least 4 inches, so down to here. But since I'm gonna still try to go with the 3 inches, what I recommend doing is fishing this up through there, of course, the wire, mounting this fan on top of your ladder to hold it up. Since these wires don't come directly down, they actually have to fish up. Basically, ran it all through this and out through here, and then this slides into the top. In order to get this to slide in, what I recommend doing is bundling the wires and then pushing it through, or else they'll catch the corners and it's a tight fit. Once you do that, of course, you could clip the correct ones to the correct areas. These are automatically come with clips. You can cut the wire and shorten them if you want, and you know, wire them in that way. But if not, you're gonna have a clip that only could go one way. Basically, this little finger here has to line up with the nub on this side. And if you don't know which side that is, just match colors, red to red, black to black, white to white. That'll get you in that connection fixed up. And then the blue and white wire here, those plug in directly, same thing. There's a little nub and a little finger there. Or you could just match up white to white, blue to blue, if you decide to cut these and make them shorter. Okay, that gets that taken care of. And then we have our ground wires. The ground wires, basically you have one for this, right? I had one for my metal plate up here, and you have one for this, and then you have one that comes off of your main power source, and then you have one that's on the stem. Okay, so that one back here is the ground, that bare wire, and then you have these 4 connected, and then you basically want to wire nut them to that ground. Be sure when you're putting these grounds together, make sure all the wires are long enough to twist together. So you want a full rotation twist on these things, where they could stay together by themselves without you having to hold them. And then same thing here, when you tie them into this ground, make sure all the wires twist together when you thread them in. This is what your wiring should look like. So basically, you should have the wire long enough like this, right? Especially on a solid copper wire, such as this main power right here. So this one right here, see how long that is? That's basically the size you want for the main power. And then if it's stranded like this, this is a lot thinner gauge wire. You want it about that long, so 3/4 of an inch, half an inch maybe. And then when you put the wire nut in, you make sure that it wraps all the way around and a little bit sticks out the end, so that way you get a good bite. And then once you start wrapping it around, like this one, you want to make sure the wires twist. So if for whatever reason you lose a wire nut, it drops off from just vibration of the motor, airplanes going overhead, at least it stays together. Okay, and then lastly, you want to put a taping joint across the whole thing like that in the direction that you're tightening it. So since this tightens this way, counterclockwise, based on the way I'm looking at it right now, but clockwise, so this one here, you're gonna twist this wire nut clockwise, and then you're gonna wrap your tape clockwise. But since I'm looking at this from the back, it's counterclockwise. But so if you're facing the wire nut like this, you want to wrap it clockwise, and then the tape around it clockwise. The way everything's wired up is green is ground, so green to the bare copper wire. So if you had a copper wire this color, that's ground, that's sticking out. Okay, sometimes it doesn't even have a jacket to show it's green. It'll just be a copper wire like this, and you know that's the ground. Okay, so green to the regular copper wire, that's ground. And then white right here to the white wire that's on this controller, like that. And then black from the controller to the black wire from your main power. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward: white to white, black to black, green to bare copper or green. If for whatever reason you're putting your wire nuts on here and you're tightening them just like that, right, and you tighten it to the point where it just twists in your hand, take it off and rewind your stranded wire. So like the stranded wire, rewind it around the solid copper again. Try it again. If it still persists to do it, either your wire nut's bad or you have too large of a wire nut and it's basically not biting into it. Once I mounted all this stuff, this piece here, and I slid this neck up in there like that, then that long bundle of wires, I folded a few times and stuffed it in the tube. At 3 inches, it's a tight fit. I'm trying to stuff the full length of those wires in here. Of course, I try to pull some up in here, but this bezel's kind of occupied with the controller and stuff, so there's only so much you could pull up, and then the rest I stuffed into that tube. And then once I got this up, I kind of pushed it in and then pushed my safety pin here through. Once I did that, then I put the cotter pin on this side and then tightened it down back and forth, going from this screw to this screw, just so that way it would center everything up in that direction evenly. And then from there, you just pull this straight down, and I have about 1.5 inches or something like that of gap. So this is the smallest you can make this piece here, unless you're willing to sacrifice by removing a cover or removing this cover. In the future, I might actually 3D print maybe a new cover, maybe something that's larger with the same holes, just so I could fit the wire up there a little bit more easily. But if you have, you know, your standard box and everything, you shouldn't have a problem, because all the wires should be able to push up into that box as well. This is what everything looks like once it's hung and ready to go. Now all I got to do is assemble the fan blades, which should be pretty easy. And the easiest part is the lighting fixture, just one plug, which is very nice. Okay, so this is the stage that I'm at. I got all the blades on, and then this beauty ring. Basically, to get these blades on, it's just 2 screws holding each one up. So there's there's 3 screws. There's like 2 here and then 1 in this area. The ones that are closest to the inner ring, you want to leave alone. That's to hold the motor up and everything else. You just do the 2 outside ones all the way around. And it's cool because instead of having to do 3 per blade, it's only 2, and it just makes things a whole lot easier to have to just put 2 in instead of the 3 per one. And then you get this beauty cover, which I already went ahead and put on. But basically you just loosen up these 2 screws here and take out a 3rd one all the way, and then you put this up there, and then as you can see, it has like a little keyway. So you put the thing in, twist it, and it locks into that key. Then you're able to tighten these 2 up and then put the safety screw in, the last one. As you can see, to finish up this, make sure all this is clean, because you might get some styrofoam in there. Just clean it out. But basically there's 1, 2, 3 screws. 1, 2, 3, those 3 screws were hanging. So basically you take off these 3 here, not the ones on the light, but there's 3 that are on this bezel. You just unscrew them, put this light up, make sure you match the 3 holes, because there's a few other holes that, you know, if you screw one in, it won't align with the other one. So you want to make sure you align those first. Put 1 screw there and then realign it. They're slotted, so you have some wiggle room. Put another screw and another screw, and now your light is already up there. Before I put the fan cover on for the light, I just want to go over what it says down here. So it says 125 millimeter diameter, which I assume is this. It's 18 watts, 110 lumens with dimming, 120 volts, 60 hertz. And then the color spectrum is 5000 Kelvin, 5500 Kelvin, 5700 Kelvin, and 6000 Kelvin for the lighting. So those are the different Kelvin intensities that you're going to get, and it's going to be putting out the 110 lumens. So before I give you an overview of the fan, one other thing that they give you is a balancer. So you clip, it tells you how to use this, but basically you clip it on the fan blades and it tells you like which ones may be out of balance, and then they give you a few weights here that stick on into those areas until you get your fan fully balanced. If for whatever reason your fan sits there and wobbles a little bit. Another thing your fan comes with is of course the remote. Let me see if I could show you the remote. Yeah, there we go. Your remote, you need to get 2 AAA batteries. It does not come with them. Maybe it's a shipping thing, so that way, you know, it doesn't have to be marked down as hazardous. To give you an overall size of what we're dealing with here, so the bezel is about 2.5 inches. The motor here is about 6 inches. Okay, from the fan blade here to the bezel top, that's about 12 inches. Plus this is maybe about 2 inches. So you're probably looking at the smallest form factor here, about 14 inches of space that you'll need if you maximize it out like I did. And given that that metal tin up there is about 8 feet to the fan blade here to the floor, it's 7 feet. So the highest up that you're going to be able to get this large fan is about 7 feet. And then this is of course a little bit closer, but it still clears my head. This setup is probably equivalent to a regular fan in the house now, just because it doesn't have that drop down bezel. It's flush here, and I made the accommodations up there to get it high enough up. So we'll start by turning on the light. So basically you just push the power button in this top right hand corner where it says light on, light off. So it's blue. If I want to change the color, I turn it off, turn it back on. It'll change the hue of it. Turn it off, turn it on, change it again, and then we're back to the normal one. Now if you decided you like the white light, by turning it off and turning it back on rapidly, it's going to change the intensity. So what you got to do is press the button. You got to give it time, like if you walked out of a room and then came back in later. Then you could press the on again and it'll remain with that same intensity. Just like that. But if I turned it off and then came back real fast, turned it on, as you can see, it's already changing the different hue of the light. So keep that in mind. Let's see what this fan looks like, the light output that it puts out under the patio. Basically we have some moonlight out here kind of as ambient light. It's completely dark out here though, it's not like lit up. And then you have the stadium lights in the background. Now underneath the patio it's pretty much dark. So here's what the light output looks like when it's going to be on the bright white set. Get it to turn on, there we go. So this is bright white. As you can see, it lights up everything. This is probably what you would want if you're trying to like look for stuff and, you know, actually work on stuff out here, because it's just a white light. Okay, as you can see, it kind of casts way out there all the way around. It brightens up the whole area for it to be usable light for sure. Okay, now the next one's going to be what I like, which is like the first one was basically like about 6,000 Kelvin, 5,500, 6,000. That's what it looks like visually. This one's probably like 5,000, 4,500 Kelvin, which is what I like to have in the house. And also working out here, it's more of a daylight looking light, not too yellow, not too bright white like a hospital. So I do like this. It kind of sets the mood a little bit more relaxed, but you could also see a lot. Okay, so as you can see, you could see just the same amount as the white light, just whatever your eyes are used to. And then we're gonna have something around like 3,000 to 3,500 Kelvin, or 3,500 to 4,000 Kelvin, more of an orangish glow, which will be this one. So this one has more of a warm tone to it. It throws out the same amount of light. Surprisingly, all these are equivalent as far as light output, the way it looks. It's just a matter of the hue it puts out. So this is more of like your walkway lights, lights that you cast on the side of your house just to give you like a warm glow, some motion lights, you know, stuff like that. That's what this is going to give you. Okay, and as you can see, you know, it covers enough. Now I'm going to compare my outside light out here, which is motion light, and that's about I think it's about like 6,000 lumens or something like that. So we'll see what that looks like compared to this bright white. So we'll focus here, and then I'll walk out and you'll see the difference. So this is more of a maybe a 5500 Kelvin light spectrum, and it covers everything, but of course you're talking about like 6,000 lumen output, so everything's bright. Now if we come back to the fan light, the bright white one, this one's a little bit more of a white light. This one is more subtle, more of something closer to what I like in the house, so it's more like this. This one still is probably a little bit more white in color compared to this one, but like I said, for homes, indoor use, outdoor use, I like this color spectrum. The bright white, or the little bit whiter light, I like if you're trying to illuminate an area to see what's going on. This I like to be able to enjoy whatever it is, like if we're entertaining or something. This is a perfect lighting spectrum to actually be under. So just to give you an idea of how dark it is, this is my light on my GoPro, and this is the brightest setting on it. For the fan, all you got to do is hit your fan button to turn it off, and then you hit 1 for speed 1, and then it'll basically take off, and then you can hit all the way up to 6, which is the highest speed of the fan, and basically that thing kicks butt. And then to turn it off, you can either hit the center button to turn off the fan, or you could hit all, turn off all. So if you hit the center button, it'll slowly turn off. But if you had, say, the light on and you just wanted the fan off, you just hit the center button and it'll keep the light on. You can turn the light off, on, and then all off turns everything off, of course. So another cool function is forward and reverse. So you don't have no more switch up here. It's all done by remote, which is cool. So if your fan's spinning and say you wanted to put it in reverse, so say I had it on number 1, I'd have to click it to go in reverse, and I heard a little thump, so it's like a little thud. You gotta wait for it to completely stop, and then it'll actually switch around to do reverse. So just keep that in mind. When you're trying to go in reverse, it'll have to come to a complete stop, and then it'll automatically rotate the opposite way. So that's pretty cool, especially for winter when you're trying to get the heat to bounce off the ceiling and be brought back down. You put it in reverse, and it'll get all that hot air from your ceiling and push it around the room. So lastly, you have your timers where you can set 1 hour, 4 hours, 8 hours, and then you have this button down here, which when I pressed it, what it did was, and I didn't read the instructions on it actually, but what it actually did right now for me is it started off slow, and then it picked up speed for the fan, which it's doing now. It's picking up speed, and then it dies down and slows down, and then so it's almost like it goes through all the speeds for you. So it acts as like a way to circulate air smoothly, and then it'll pick it up to like move the air maybe a little bit further away, so that way you get a different type of air movement instead of a constant air movement. So that's pretty cool. Haven't seen that really on fans, but maybe it's on these higher end, nicer fans. One thing I could tell you is, as you can see where this fan blade is right here, there's no movement in the actual blades on where they're positioned. Everything's pretty trued up nicely, which is cool, and there's no wobble in the fan. So if you look right here, I get no wobble at all. So this fan's really balanced nicely. So for whatever reason your fan doesn't turn on, the first thing you should check is to make sure you got power. So of course, check your voltage, make sure you got power to the light, so use your tester. If you do, another thing you got to do is make sure all your connections are good. So what you want to do there when you make sure your connections are good is make sure the power's off, and then make sure all your connectors are connected to all the wires, and make sure your wires are all hooked up. If that all checks out, another thing you could check is that your receiver and transmitter are connected. So to do that, basically you turn off the power, whether it's your light switch or your breaker box and breaker panel switch. Hold this for 3 to 5 seconds, the center power button. Turn on your power as you're doing it, and then it will pair. Okay, if all else fails, reach out to customer service or customer support and they should get you covered. So I think the best part about this fan, and I know it might sound kind of weird, but is that the motor is quiet. I don't hear the motor at all compared to my other fans. I hear the motors on them. They make a hum, or they're quiet, but the light fixture emits like a buzzing sound on the wireless ones. This one has no hum of the motor, and the light doesn't make a sound at all. And then also I don't get any whirls from the blades, but you could hear the wind blowing, of course, because I mean it's spinning so fast at high speed. So keep that in mind. Is, you know, this is actually really nice. I like it a lot, especially compared to the fans that I have inside. I probably should have bought another few more of these instead of buying the ones that I have currently installed. So for the verdict, do I recommend this fan? Yes, I do. If you're looking for something large, sleek, and modern, this is a real nice fan. This matte black looks real classy. I like the sleek fan blades going all the way down. They're not huge. I like having the more fan blades. It just looks modern. And then also, I like how this bezel covers up all the screw heads and it sits flat, so it's super flush. You don't have to deal with those large lights, and you don't have to deal with junk collecting in the globe itself. And then one cool feature that I really appreciate, looking at it as an engineering standpoint, is I like how they tapered these fan blades. So they're super thick here, and then they taper out, so it keeps it rigid, but it also thins it out so it slices through the wind or the air a lot easier, and allowing you to have more efficiency as far as like moving air around. There's no need to spend extra weight that you don't need, especially on 66 inches. That's a large fan. So it's a super classic look and it's a modern look. So it's cool because they tie in both. You have the modern globe, you have the classic black, you have the classic thin lines, and it's also modern at the same time. You don't see any of the hardware. It's just an overall nice looking fan. So that's going to complete today's video on the Frstem 66-inch modern fan. If you do like this video, give it a thumbs up. It's greatly appreciated. If you want to see content like this and other content I'll be posting in the near future, consider subscribing. Until next time, I'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks for watching.